If someone asks, yeah. I can
fully,
fire that.
Yes. Yes, Daddy. Let me up. Fire away.
That's a gun I can handle.
Right, yeah. The box that came is my favorite. Yeah, I really like I'm Wes with Unboxed.
I am Ace at Ace_Wild at Instagram. A real human person. And we are joined by our special guest today,
Stuart with the Gay and Lesbian Archive of Mid-America.
Yay! So we are joining Stuart today to learn a little bit about queer history, local queer history. All right, I got kind of a serious question.
Okay.
What does humanity completely misunderstand? Ooh.
I say humanity. We completely misunderstand ourselves. We still segregate each other. We still have marginalized communities. I mean, we do not realize that we're all connected. We still stratify each other. So I think humanity does not understand humanity right now.
You don't think that that is part of humanity, though? Of, like, having that hierarchy and that alpha and that beta? I mean, like, with capitalism and the poor and the rich, and even when you are in high school, movies like Mean Girls where there's, like, cliques, like, they're always, I don't know, it just seems like we are kind of a culture that has taken that excess of, you know, alpha versus beta versus...
I feel that's a primal thing, because you could look at animals and also see that structure system too, and we're advanced, like we have the ability to rise above that primal urges and those primal ways, and we choose not to. Like, it's a choice to segregate, it's a choice to marginalize individuals, it's a choice, and we choose to navigate that way instead of doing the opposite and being human and practice humanity and being humane. We just don't do that.
Work.
Yeah, I think along the same lines, I think what we don't get right is compassion.
Mm.
I mean, we give a lip service, right?
Yeah.
But it's not effectively practiced and effectively integrated into our interactions with each other, because if it were, then we wouldn't have some of the stuff that you are just talking about.
Yeah.
Granted, we are animals,
yeah.
But we do understand compassion, and we can demonstrate it and do demonstrate it.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know that other animals do.
Yeah, not to the level.
Right, not to the extent. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's what we get wrong.
That made me think, when you said that lip service, I made me think of Governor Newsom's statement yesterday after another mass shooting, where, you know, he's like, let's just, you know, these are the platitudes. Let's, you know,
right.
Let's thank the cops who showed up. Let's thank the people who are here now, and let's thank the families who are showing support to other families. He's like, we've all said these words before. We've all said them in the order that we need to say them. We all mean them sincerely. He's like, but what the hell's wrong with us? Why are we letting this happen? Why does this keep happening here?
Gun control.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
I mean, think of that lip service of, why do we keep marginalizing individuals? Why do we keep stratifying ourselves? Why do we keep some for some people and none for those people? Like, why does it have to be that way? It doesn't. It's just choices.
Right.
We could do better. We could do better.
We could.
We could do a lot better.
Yeah.
And we just saw a history of people being oppressed and marginalized and fighting and struggling to find their way to advocate for themselves and their friends and family. And a lot of that is just repeated. Like, if you were to pull posters and stuff current, I mean, I feel like you would see some of the same imagery, some of the same wording, some of the same calls for recognition. Like the poster from the AIDS, or HIV/AIDS is a gay biowarfare against gays and blacks. So, like, you still see that today. Right. Like, it hasn't changed.
Right.
What do you think will make that change?
People choosing to rise above their rearing, to rise above those judgments that they place on other individuals, to rise into humanity, to actually realize that we are all connected and together, and we shouldn't be separated. I don't know if that'll happen in my lifetime. It would be awesome if it did. I mean, there's a full capacity for it too.
There is the capacity for it too, but there's always been the capacity. Mm-hmm. As long as there have been humans, as long as there have been civilized humans. And
I think now is like, I think the trajectory moving forward in like our world, I think the capacity is even greater. I
Oh,
think
yes.
because of the advance of technology, I think that what's happened now is that there's so much more visibility with social media, with platforms, with internet, with things that weren't available to our brothers and sisters that had to, walk like physically and make things and distribute flyers and things. Where now, like everything can be accessed from something in your hand in private in the bathroom while you're pooping.
Right.
Like in your bedroom, like, while you're just casually like at dinner or whatever.
At a stoplight, we know you do it.
It was at the stoplight, which wasn't available before.
Yeah.
So I think our time is coming. Hopefully.
Well, I think that shrinks the world and makes it easier to comprehend. Oh, there are people in China who are being imprisoned for who they are, right? Or there are people in India who don't get oxygen and are dying of COVID.
Or people in Saudi Arabia who are being beheaded.
And I just think that tools like this may make it easier to affect some of the change that needs to happen. Because it strikes me that having one of these tools, but it makes it easier to connect. That's the thing that I've always argued about the internet since it was invented, which happened in my lifetime. Is that it makes people with very, very specific interests, it makes it easier for them to connect, whether those interests are positive or negative.
Yeah, it's both sides.
Yeah.
It can be as bad as it is as good.
And I just think that the power of those connections may lead to some of the changes that I think many of us would like to see happen.
Yes.
Word.
So let's start with, where are we?
We are
in a very cold room.
I know.
I'm freezing, and I'm a person that never gets cold. I'm just glad that I'm wearing a dark shirt because like my nipples are so hard right now. So there you go, everywhere.
We are in the Miller Nichols Library on the campus of UMKC, and we are in one of our conference rooms because our normal reading room special collection space is under construction, and that's why it's so cold. They're working on the HVAC. But yeah, we're here in our conference room, and it's a great place to show off some of the many, many resources that are available in the Gay and Lesbian Archive.
Yeah, we'll take a look at those here in a little bit.
So, Wes, how did you reached out to Stuart, you met Stuart, how did this all transpire? How did we start with this?
Well, so a little prior history for myself. When I lived in Oklahoma, I worked with Tulsans for Equality, which is now Oklahomans for Equality, and I worked on their history project. So, boxes where people just donated. It's like they just cleaned off the desk and everything was just stacked in it. And so I was on Ace the other day, like sorting everything out by year and then breaking that down by month and trying to organize. So I spent the summer doing that in a back room, just sorting all that stuff out. And so I was wondering if there was something like that here. And so I just started Googling for, KC queer history. And this is one of one of the first things that popped up.
Good.
Right? Thankfully.
Yes.
That's on Ace. Like, there's numerous news articles from like 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and then there weren't any last year, I don't think.
Can we pull back a little bit? So what exactly is GLAMA?
Yeah.
GLAMA is, it's the acronym, because you got to have a good acronym, right?
Yes.
It's the Gay and Lesbian Archive of America, and it is an initiative to officially collect, preserve, and make accessible the documents and artifacts that reflect the histories of the LGBT communities in the Kansas City region.
How long has GLAMA been doing this?
Since 2009.
Since 2009. And what is, I guess, like the earliest piece of history that you have?
Gosh, that is a really good question. Well, it's hard for me to say what's the oldest object or document in the collection, but I can say that as part of the research that has come out of stuff in GLAMA, that we have learned that there was a law on the books of Kansas City, Missouri, that prohibited dressing in clothing that was inappropriate for your sex in 1860.
Wow.
So I would love to see that panel to hear what people are sitting there deeming like this is inappropriate for your sex or gender. Like, women can't wear pants, boys can't wear dresses. Like, you think just like men can't wear dresses, but you also think like, you know, you can't wear shorts, like your bathing suits, like, you know, women with long pants, things like that. Like, it's just so.
It's
And weren't like George Washington and them wearing wigs and heels?
But it was specifically
in makeup.
Yeah.
In makeup.
yeah.
So like, we're not doing that anymore, guys. Here's the law. We wrote it.
You know, it was men in dresses and women in pants,
Mhm.
essentially. Is
Yeah.
what it boiled down to. And it was that specific.
Well, it's
And the
definitely
same would be
it's oppressing equality.
Yeah.
Letting women know that you're submissive and that you will never be equal to men. You will never be able to wear pants because you are not like as strong or smart as, you know, this other.
You're
gender.
not the same as.
But it's interesting because that stays on the books until 1941.
Wow.
That is a long time.
Wow.
And then, again, this female impersonation research, one of the things that we find in the late 19th and early 20th century is evidence of people being arrested on the streets in this city for, like, men in women's clothing or women in pants, right?
Wow.
Being arrested and being given significant fines. At the same exact time, there are people on the stage, like Carol Norman, like other female impersonators in vaudeville, where it's okay.
And they're making
And
money. They're
celebrated.
living.
Yeah. So it's this weird dichotomy that it's okay if it's in this world of the artificial, but in the world of the real, we will arrest you.
Once it steps off stage, once it
yeah.
steps off camera, that's when it becomes inappropriate. That's when it becomes too difficult or gross to look at.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Too taboo.
That's such a interesting.
Yeah, it's really, really
That's
interesting.
such an interesting line that is there.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what you do here.
Mhm.
How long have you been here? What exactly do you do?
I've been here since 2008, and it's just like you were describing. We get this stuff in, and it's very rarely is it already organized for us.
I wouldn't think so.
So we spend our time organizing it in a way that makes sense for people who are going to use it. And then we create these documents that are inventories, essentially, and those are what's online so that people can discover what we have.
You said we. Is there like a team behind you? Do you have multiple people? Is there
there's a number of people who work in the department. We have about, between the sound archive and what we do up here on this, sound archive is on the ground floor because the records are heavy. And what we do up here, there are maybe 8 or 9 full-time people.
And this is just for GLAMA, not for like
This is for the all
for everything.
Oh, yeah.
So like even like women's history, like people of color, like
music history, all of it.
Okay. Wow, that's I feel like
that's a lot.
but I feel like that's not very many people.
It's not enough.
Yeah,
We are seriously understaffed. We use a lot of graduates, not a lot, but we use graduate students to help us with the organizing work. But it's still not enough because it, as you know, it took a whole summer to do a box of stuff.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It takes a long time
Yeah.
to do this work. So it's just very laborious and very time intensive.
Where are you getting these resources and things? Are they donated? Are you going out and seeking these things? Are they coming from estates or like how are you collecting all of this?
From all pockets.
Okay.
And it is all donated. We are the University of Missouri, so we have no money to buy anything. And we rely on the
So you're
generosity
essentially like
of the community.
of like a gatekeeper of like these incredibly precious, like some of them rare and very vintage, like parts of history.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
incredible.
Yeah, it's an honor, and to me, it's really, really thrilling to be able to do that, to be those to be entrusted with this stuff, because we are gatekeepers and we are preserving the legacies of these organizations, of these individuals, of this history, right, of this queer history, and I personally and my colleagues too take it very, very seriously, and it's really important to us to not only preserve it, but to also get it in front of people so that they can engage with it, right? I mean, you guys saw just how powerful it can be to see this record. And of course, being a university, our first priority is our students. And we've had really good luck because the students love this stuff. They really, really into it, and we've had a lot of really interesting student work come out of it. Like that film, the Ordnance Project was a student project.
Oh, wow.
Um,
That's incredible.
yeah. And so more broadly, to get these stories and this city reflected in the national narrative, like the whole Barbara Greer story, the Naiad Press woman and the woman who wrote for the Ladder. You know, she did that while she was in Kansas City. And there are other links to the national story that are important to have reflected outside of the stories that are repeatedly told in New York, in San Francisco, and Los Angeles. It's this Midwestern connection that to me is another very important facet of the work that we're doing.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Walking around talking, you said there was a segment of like, you know, like the early 80s to the mid 80s that were kind of missing. And I kind of brought up a little bit of like the HIV/AIDS epidemic that, you know, like definitely like killed a lot of people in history that could have been artists and dreamers and thinkers and all these things or whatever to help elevate and teach us. But you obviously, you know, said that you lived through those times or whatever. So now coming here in 2008 and starting this or whatever, and you're collecting all of this like collage of queer history. I mean, obviously, like walking through, like I knew some of this stuff and you know some of this stuff. So do you ever get stuff that you're just like, oh my God, I've never seen this and I've never heard of this, but like this is a part of my history? And like, how do you navigate like fact checking and looking and making sure? And then like when you find pieces that are like, this is something I've never seen, how do you go out to like find more pieces? Is that something
and like I said, it's mostly.
Do you run across things often that you're just like, this is cool, I've never seen this, and I like live here, and I'm like, this is
yesterday.
It's like
no, it
a treasure hunt.
Like, yeah,
I
it
know.
was the day before. So
it's like finding a dinosaur bone. You're like, where's the rest of it?
We have these. That's exactly what
it's like Indiana Jones. Like, yeah, it's fun.
We have these hippie magazines from the early to mid 70s, and this one from 72 made reference to a group called the Gay Activist Alliance, something like that. But it was a name I'd never seen before. And I was like, what the hell is that? Because that's after the Phoenix Society, and that's before the Gay People's Union, which was the student group that sued the school.
So you're like on a hunt to find these people.
Yes.
You're on a hunt to find the organization and the people, and like, tell me all about this.
So it's like, what is this little
where do you begin? Like, where do you throw out, like, I mean, like, out on Craigslist? Do you put it in your Grindr profile looking for it? Or, like, what's the protocol of, like...
Because it happens so frequently, it's impossible to keep track of all of it. I just hope that I will encounter something...
that will relate and tie to it.
That will tie to it. Or now that I know it exists, maybe I'll go search the newspaper to see if I can find something
that will
about it. That maybe got some press.
So you're not always fishing. You're just hoping that somebody will just throw a fish.
Yes. Wow. Or depending upon what it is and how it might relate to other stuff, I might do some fishing if I have the capacity to do it. But that's a really good question.
It is, because I mean, walking through and looking through some of this stuff, like I can remember actually a lot of these things. I'm not even from here, but just like coming up in queer culture here and growing up and just being inquisitive like I am. But some of the things I'm like, I've never heard of, but also like I said, I'm a person that will go home later tonight and like think back on it and like go into a rabbit hole of Google all night trying to figure out like what this is and find more information. Yeah. I mean, to me, number one, like history is the most important thing that I think that our generation could really learn from, but also queer history, because there's been so much erasure. And also I wanted to go into like GLAMA, you know, gay and lesbian. There's a section that we don't talk about, like people of color, like trans isn't included in like the GLAMA acronym. And I think it's important that we have these like tidbits of information, but also you said like a lot of it is getting donated to you, given to you. I'm like, there's not a whole lot of stuff I'm sure that's coming in from that time era because of, you know, erasure and getting rid of things. Like
or hiding.
Or like when people die and then their families like throw it away or burn it or get rid of it.
Because they don't want anyone to know.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times that's happened with donors, especially elderly donors, who say, I want you guys to have this because when I die and my family comes in, they're just going to throw it away.
Yeah.
And
they don't value it.
Yeah. And it's you ask about discovering stuff. Well, quite honestly, all of this has been a discovery. I've been a local history librarian for 25 years, and I worked at Kansas City Public Library and I worked at Johnson County Library. And I knew there was queer history. There had to be, but it was not reflected in any of these collections, in any of these traditional sources of Kansas City history, newspaper clipping collections, or other archival repositories. It just wasn't there. And once we started this, it's like, oh my God. And, for me personally, the female impersonation stuff, because it goes back so far, it's like, this has always been here. Nobody's ever picked up this thread and followed it back. Because it's always been a part of Kansas City theater history, always, since the very beginning, since 1860, right? When the law was on the books. So, in a way, the stories that are reflected by this stuff are all new, relatively, to other Kansas City historians, and now are integrated and are reflected, or will be reflected, as we move forward and write new histories of the city.
So thinking about, talk about new stuff, like how do you identify what you're going to capture and what you're going to, preserve, especially with a lot of things being digital now and, in this virtual space? Like, how do you decide what you keep and what you don't keep?
The digital question is bigger than just this little queer archive. It's a real problem for archivists across the world, because it's really, really easy to create digitally.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we're doing it now.
This easy.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really hard to preserve it long term. I mean, you guys probably don't remember 5 1/4 inch floppy disks.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do.
Using them.
Yes, because we were on the base I was on. Like, we had the government had not updated their systems.
Right.
Yeah, we had these big floppy disks. That we
Right.
I like my the video that convinced me to pick the field that I was in was on one of those big disks.
A laser disc.
The laser disc.
Yeah. I'm not. I wouldn't want to be a historian of the early 21st century because there aren't going to be documents.
Well, there's certain things you can't document. There's certain things that need to be tangible, like these, like audio, like records and like buttons and like these condom packages with condoms from still there, like the cards that to get into like clubs and stuff. Like pictures are great, but like the tangible things that's what's incredible.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like Stefan, as a queer black artist. Like he produces digital work, but he also has like a CD. Buy my CD. That's something that would be like a record. Like that would be your tangible like item that you could hold.
But could be obsolete, because I mean, like you think of now, and like maybe do they still sell actually CD players? But like even if they don't, in
you don't even buy
years,
computers with
if they have them and they break, do we have
ways
like
to get
that
that
low
information?
grade technology to find parts to fix a CD player to play a CD or play like a MP3? Like I found, I think, a Nano in my old room when my dad passed away last year, and like I was like, I bet there's like a million songs on here, but I will never know because I can't find a charger to like charge it to like play it.
Right.
Yes.
So it's like it's cool to have the actual Nano and like this physical piece, but like,
what do you do with it?
Yeah, what do you do with it?
Right. And so it's just the scale of the digital content that's being created. There's so much of it so that's problematic. We have a library school student who's graduating, but he's been spending the past 2-3 years trying to help us figure out a process for just extracting the files off of things like 5 1/4 inch floppies or CDs or whatever. And we just did an inventory. Just us, right? Just us in our little medium-sized archive. And he calculated that we have over 1 million files that need to come off containers.
Wow.
And that's just getting them off the container. That's not having the
how many terabytes is that?
That's not having the version of Microsoft Word or WordPerfect that will read the file.
Oh, because this is the platforms, the
Yes.
software at the time.
And then like the time to do that, and then the time like once you get it off there, you're able to read it. Like how you catalog that.
Right.
Like that's so like time extensive. Like wow.
So I'm a big believer in paper.
Yeah, it's wild because I was under the impression that it would be easier to maintain, document, and preserve the digital, and that it's harder to maintain and preserve like the physical copies.
I can show you a 500-year-old piece of paper.
But
I'm not sure I'll be able to show you what's on a 500-year-old flash drive.
Well,
I can tell you.
years now.
I've got some DVDs that do not work, and they should work. Like they've been in their cases whole
But I also think about that too, and I'm just like, what happens if I die? And all the movies that I bought on Amazon Prime, does my account go to someone? Does someone else get to watch those movies, or does like they just get it and now someone else rebuy them all over again?
Right.
Like, that's bullshit. And my will, can I put my Amazon Prime account goes to?
Yes, can you?
My Netflix account goes to. My Voodoo account goes to.
Yeah.
Or just leave your password somewhere.
Yeah. Just keep it open.
I mean, they got to make
Yeah.
sure they keep paying the payment, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. Or what if I
Or your
use someone
iTunes
else's?
account, your iTunes library.
Yes.
That would be the easiest way. Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Or Spotify, all the playlists that I've curated.
Yeah.
My summer jams, my bathtub time, my gym time, my,
I think those.
Get it out.
I mean, if your account isn't deleted, those should stay because I search for those too. Like I'm sure like somebody's already made a playlist for like Mariah's Best, and so I look for that playlist and then I'll play that instead of making my own.
Mm.
I think that depends on, obviously, the service, but I work with a guy who made the mistake of sharing his youthful MySpace songs that he recorded and put on MySpace.
Oh.
And he had to go through hoops to get rid of them.
What?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, once something's online, it's permanent forever. Like that's.
What
I mean,
about
that's what we say,
forever?
but yeah, forever is like now. That's air quotes. It's not really forever.
No.
Yeah.
What about all my nudes and videos? When I die and then somebody like takes over, they can sell all of that vintage work.
All that vintage work.
Should I be cataloging it and like putting it in like a Patreon or like holding it with like, I don't know, like key around my neck that I die with? Like will unlock all the secrets to like.
It's all facial recognition.
Yes.
They see this in your face.
It's like
Your
bloated corpse.
thumbprints.
Looks the
Or
same.
some other recognition.
Yeah. Oh my
Ooh,
god.
yes.
Oh yeah.
Hold his legs back.
Yeah, I worry about that. Yeah, or think about that. With we have a wide range of sex toys.
They do. I think
what
they
happens
do.
when I go? Like, our daughter doesn't know that, and she doesn't watch these anyways.
Oh, like
Yeah.
what when she has to go like pack like unpack
The,
up all the house and like get rid of everything, she's like,
holy!
Whoa.
What's behind this locked door?
But I
That's
feel
why
like-
it's always been locked.
I feel like she'd just be like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I feel like she would like wouldn't be surprised, but still very embarrassed.
Yeah, I think she'd definitely be embarrassed.
Grossed out, not really surprised, but definitely embarrassed.
There's
Yeah.
a really, really funny scene in the book called Plays Well with Others, and it's about the AIDS crisis. And it's the opening scene of the book, and it's about this young man who's on his deathbed, and his parents are coming. He's in New York, and his parents are coming from Iowa. And so he's able to sort of mumble to his caretaker friend to get the dildos out of the apartment.
Yeah, I feel that.
Erase my browser history.
Exactly. That's what that is. It's erase it.
And so he goes with these, and he goes and fills up a couple of shopping bags
Yeah.
full of dildos. And again, this is the 80s. This is like mid-80s. And,
So they're not reusable shopping bags, is what you're saying.
well,
They're not
paper.
green.
They're paper shopping bags. And it's raining, and so he's on the subway.
Oh my goodness.
And so the shopping bags break, and these
I wouldn't
dildos are
leave them
flopping
there.
all over
These aren't my
the subway
bags.
car.
Just walk away.
Where are my groceries?
And he's trying to gather these things, and at one point, everyone on the car is at one end of the subway car. It's just a really, really hilariously
Oh my
written
God.
scene. It's so funny.
That's like, no. My dildo story. Never.
Oh, it's really funny.
So I lived in Chicago, and I live with this roommate. My puppy doesn't watch. And he got really sick and didn't know what was wrong with him. He ended up having Crohn's disease. But we ended up moving out of the apartment, and so I had to pack up all of our stuff or whatever, and we didn't have a place to live, so I put it all in storage, even his stuff. And then I moved into a studio. He lived with me for a little bit, and I ended up moving back to Kansas. And that stuff was in storage for probably 6 months before I went, and I just got a truck, and I brought it all back, and I put it in more storage or whatever, and a lot of it was in my dad's house. So when my dad died, I had to go and, like, clear it out or whatever, and my aunt came, my dad's sister, to help me, like, have, like, yard sales, garage sales, estate sales, whatever. and there was like a slingback bag or whatever. And my friend Courtney and I were there and had set up or whatever. And there's a lot of Hispanic people, and like I don't speak Spanish very well, but my aunt does. And so like she was talking to them, and we're just kind of watching, making sure that nobody's stealing anything, and trying to talk to people that knew English to help or whatever. Not doing a very good job. And my aunt is like over talking to this lady, and me and Courtney like are across like the yard or whatever, and there's people there, and my aunt, I guess she pulls out this dildo and is like waving it in the air, and in my head I'm just like, I don't know, like $5, and she's like, no, what is this? And I was just like, oh my gosh. And then I realized, number one, we're in rural America. No, it's not like common. So I run over there and I was like, oh my God. She's like, oh, she realizes it and like puts it down. And I'm like, you were just waving a dildo. And she's like, why were you saying $5? Because I was like, because I thought you wanted to know how much
A price.
Yeah, a price. And she's like, no. So this little old lady, I guess, had come over and picked up that bag. And she went up to my aunt and she's like, I wanted to get this, but there's something in it, so I'm not going to take it. And my aunt's like, oh. So she opened it and like whatever possessed her to reach in, grab out this like floppy dildo and raise it in the air. Hilarious. And so my aunt is like freaking out, and because I think she thought it was my dad's. And I was like, no. This is not mine either. But this bag, I remember, was my old roommate's from a few years ago that was in storage. This is his. It's fine. It's a sex toy. It's not something to be ashamed of, but also I will take that. Unless they want to buy it for $5.
Just some soap, we're fine.
Yes, and so she was like mortified, and I was like, I'm not the one that was like waving a dildo in the air, like in like an open like area. And she's like, $5. Like, I don't know, like it's probably used. Is that a bad price? 50 cents? I don't know.
It comes
Take
with the
two.
bag.
But the lady was so distraught that she put her stuff down and she left. Because my aunt was like, here you go, you can take the bag now. She's like, I don't want anything, and left. And I was like, how sexually oppressed is that woman that she probably needed this dildo?
Right.
So I feel like the universe handed that to her, and it was a missed opportunity.
She turned away.
Super missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. God's timing is always right. Because I got a great story out of it.
So, how are ways that somebody can find out more information about GLAMA? Like, where can they find those resources?
They can go online. Just search GLAMA and queer or GLAMA and gay on Google, and that'll get you there. And there's really a ton of stuff on the website. There's videos, there's pictures,
Nice. Yeah.
and then there's all these inventories to these individual collections, and there's contact information if folks think they might have something that we would be interested in. We would love to talk with you.
Is there anything specific that you are looking for?
You know, people always ask me, what do you want for the archive? And I say, I don't know, what do you have?
Right.
It's like, I never knew somebody would have condoms or
Right, yeah.
record albums or pictures of bars from 1987.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really, really open to just about anything. And so, yeah.
Just like a bracelet and a bottom lash.
Yeah.
Whatever it might
What
be.
point did it belong to?
Yes.
Because I always argue that every little piece helps to tell the entire story once you put it all together. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
So, yeah, it really is wide open in terms of what helps us tell these stories.
Is GLAMA here at UMKC? Does this bleed over into any educational? What is it? What am I looking for? Credits, schooling, education. Are there classes?
CSUs like continuing?
Yeah, are there educations here, like in this facility that focus on queer history, that focus on LGBT, like Kansas City history?
In 2014, we offered for the first time ever on this campus a class on U.S. gay and lesbian history, and that was me and another teacher who has since moved on to Wisconsin. But I've taught that class 4 different times since then, and we just announced a new major, I guess is what you would call it, a new discipline. It's called Race, Ethnic, and Gender Studies, REGS, and so that's where Black Studies, that's where Latinx Studies, and that's where Women and Gender Studies are all housed. They're all housed under that one umbrella.
Okay.
And so students who pursue that degree can focus on one of those areas: Black, Latinx, or
is that
women.
specifically indigenous to like American Black Latinx women?
Not
history?
necessarily.
Okay. Because I was like, you were talking about POC, like, I mean, Latinx and Black people, but also like Asian Americans. I mean,
Right.
they definitely had suffered
Right.
in some concentration camps and stuff that Americans did too.
Yes.
Right.
Those groups.
And it's like less than 2 years old. So I think there's room for
Growth.
some
Opportunities
evolution.
too,
Yeah. But you could focus on one of those areas, but then you have to take coursework in other areas.
Where does that history come from? Like, as a professor, somebody that's teaching something or giving that, where does that education come from for yourself? You said 2014. Like, even now, like today, there's still so much to learn. You said this past week that you receive things you're like, I've never
Right.
heard of this, and I want to
Right.
jump into this rabbit hole. Like, how do you even gauge where to begin to teach? I mean, you said like 1860 or whatever the laws passed. Like, where do you start? Because I mean, as much as we want to teach history, that I feel like definitely not just America but the world has tried so very desperately to erase and whitewash. You know, and the fact of the matter is like, since the beginning of time, queer people have been here in some capacity, whether it's gay, whether it's lesbian, whether it's trans, whether it's bisexual, whether it's something.
It crosses all species. Like,
It does.
It's in the animal kingdom. It's in
And
ours.
for all time. So where do you...
Well, and for our class, we started in the late 19th century, and because it was specifically American, and so that's 1880s or 90s is when you see the term homosexual used for the first time, right? And but prior to that, there are these really intimate same-sex relationships between women and between men. The Abraham Lincoln and Joshua Speed story, and
Sounds hot.
all these women,
Right.
and so there is this emerging sort of traditional American narrative, American queer narrative, and because really queer history didn't start as a discipline, as a formal discipline until the mid-70s, so about 50 years ago.
What does that mean, formal discipline?
That means studying in colleges and universities and producing academic books about it, and having the documentation. That's probably the most important thing.
Well, I think a lot of queer studies back then too were more geared towards like hormonal and brain and like scientific things, and not actual lifestyles, and not actually a correlation between human relationships. As much as I feel like really broke it down as a sex and as a gender,
Yeah.
and like a neurological or kind of that aspect of like queer culture. Because you look at things like the Kinsey scale and putting people on spectrums and talking about integration of like nature versus nurture, where it's like now as queer culture, like I think in the next 50 years, like we're going to look back and see people like Heidi Banks, who were drag queens in the city that were reading on Sunday afternoons to children, and places like Hamburger Mary's and places like Woody's, and looking at RuPaul's Drag Race, where it's like completely different queer culture than it was 20 years ago, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Like the mainstreaming of it, yeah. To where it becomes so normalized that you don't, it's not the coming out experience anymore. It's just being you.
It's not the rebranding and normalization of like social or brain disorder, where it's like, homosexual was like treated as conversion therapy and things like that.
Criminal intention because you were identified that way. Yeah.
But you'll still have that blending of generations, just like we do with this table. It's like I have never been on an online forum to find a sex partner, right? So there's always that coming together of different life experiences, and so that's why this kind of thing exists.
It's the bridge to the past,
right?
Yeah.
Because I can tell you what it was like to go to Pegasus, right?
Peggy Sue's.
I know, I love that.
I love that.
What is Queenie's? And I was calling it something else.
Queen Priscilla's.
Queen Priscilla's. You're like, that's not the name.
It's not Queenie's, but I like that. I would have called it Peggy Sue's.
I'm sure someone did.
I want to go there.
I'm sure someone did.
Yes.
I was about to start. I want to thank you for this opportunity to see some of our past and learn a little bit from you. And it's exciting once things get back to a more level of quote unquote normalcy, that you can have tours and start providing that space again, because that's not available right now, but it's definitely something that will be coming, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Are you right now accepting more donations and volunteers?
We are always accepting donations. The volunteers is still a bit
Gray area with.
it's a little problematic. It's still at this point. But to return to your question about educational opportunities, I do presentations all the time.
Oh, you have something coming up, don't
I
you?
have something coming up on June 16th with the Mid-Continent Public Library.
Yes.
It's an online thing.
Okay.
mymcpl.org is their website. And it's a program on civil rights in the 60s and then again in the 80s. So the young man who did the film is going to present on the 80s
Wow.
around the Ordnance Project, and I'll talk about the Phoenix Society in the mid-60s.
Wow.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
The Mid-Continent does a really good setup for queer hair, like during Pride Month. Like they have that, I think KC Public Library is opening June 1st. They're
Yeah.
actually opening their doors again, so
Yeah.
they should have a setup as well.
Yeah. So yeah, and I always available for all sorts of talks.
You know what I think would be cool is if we went to some of these queer spaces and had them all put like a little time capsule together to bring for you to hold
Oh,
on
like
to.
a queer time cap. I love
Yeah,
that.
how fun would it be
Open
to
in
like
50 years,
a
100
queer
years.
time capsule from Woody's or from Hamburger Mary's, you
Or
know?
from all the bars.
and
Like all
just
the
even the Queens just, like, come
organizations.
and like Center of Inclusion and like
I mean, we have 90.
and they're
or
going
94
through like a
different
lot of
organizations.
transitions. So like even like that would be awesome.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's a good idea.
Well, because I was thinking too, I was like, you know, what, like you said, like you have that Missy Beast card and stuff, but like, what things do I have that I think are just garbage or trash, but
Right.
essentially like are part of like iconic history in the city?
Yeah.
Like that, like I told you, like I have a shirt from when I worked at Envy. I still think I have
Right.
one. Like that bar no longer exists, but it was such a hot spot for such a hot minute.
Yeah.
And I made so many friendships and I learned so many things. And
Right.
like, it's a piece of history for me.
Well, like we had A Service Foundation had Millennial League when I first moved here,
Uh-huh.
and I'm thinking I was like, I know I have Millennial League shirts and posters at home, like
Awesome.
because I was DJing some of their events.
and
So
like,
yeah.
think
my
about,
name's on there, so I kept
Yeah.
that.
but also
stuff.
think about
Yeah.
some of like the photo shoots that you were in for organizations or parties or events that no longer
Yeah.
are here. Like those are still.
Vital Voice, one of the cover
Yeah.
of one of their magazines. Yeah, for
Which
Barbara.
is-
Yes. I have a stack of those because I was like,
Yeah.
ooh, look at this.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
forget.
totally would give you some of that.
That's
Yes.
awesome. Well, yeah, and that's been a really interesting part of this whole process is to have donors or potential donors sort of recontextualize their stuff once they see it in conjunction with some of this
Yeah.
other material.
Yeah, it's
they think
added.
about it differently. It's like, oh well, yeah, well my stuff is as valid as any of this other stuff, and it helps to tell that story.
Yeah, it adds to the piece of the puzzles
Yeah,
to make this
exactly.
bigger and to create a whole entire narrative of like a time. And now they think, I'm like, I could reach out to Christian, Chad Slater, like
Yeah.
Jason
People
Skidmore,
who've been
people
doing this
that
for
worked with me at
years.
Envy were like, we had like lots of things and lots of memories, you know, like you think about.
But then we should sit down with their recorder.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yes. Yeah.
Like a fourth grade recorder. 3 blind mice. 3 blind
Oh
mice.
my god! I just had a flashback to middle school. Thank you, elementary school.
Was killing it. I was killing the game at that time. Yes.
I did that too.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, do you have any questions for us? This was great. This is super
Yeah.
fun.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, if you've got stuff, if you want to do stuff, that'd be awesome.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I'm like for our condom labels. I'm thinking of how our condom labels changed during the pandemic to
Really?
to like meet the moment, and so they switched from just talking about like testing and things like that to wear a mask, and this is another way to protect yourself. And I was like, that's
That's a moment.
that's a moment in time
Yeah.
that you want to capture.
A
Yeah.
couple years ago when I was like working with the HIM project and we came up with the common things and making sure that the pictures and photos were representative of POC individuals, where normally
Right.
it was like demographic was white men and all
Right.
these things where even like information wasn't even stuffed in, it was just a condom.
Yeah.
So it's like you see like, and to us it's like so normal and just evolution, but
Yeah.
the reality is in like 50 years, 20 years, like people are going to look
Yeah.
back and be like, wow, these are so primitive. Like we're looking like these are funny, but these are so primitive compared to where we are.
Yeah.
But it's still a part of like our history,
Yeah.
which we really definitely need to get back into American education curriculum, and not just on a private level, but also
On a public level.
and on
Yeah.
like a young public level, elementary school,
It's our
middle
story.
school, high
Right.
school.
Right.
Wow, thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing.
Thank
This was a
you.
lot of fun.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah. I feel like we've covered a lot of things today, and there's a lot of names and a lot of links that we are going to probably provide below. Thank you guys for watching us today.
Yes.
We appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave everything in the links below. If you would like to be a guest on our show, reach out to myself or Wes. And I want to thank you again for being a part of this journey. And I hope that this conversation opens up more questions and doors for people. So let's continue this. Wes?
Go through your items. You may have something now that you didn't realize was historical in nature or could be historical. So find your old cards, pictures, posters, flyers, and reach out to Stuart here and turn those in.
Even private photos.
Definitely private photos.
Well, not those private photos, but those ones too.
We'll take
directly to Ace.